You get 3 rolls on the tower, and each number corresponds to a random question I have.
Perfect. Oh, this is so cute. So I just
take this and roll it down there, and it'll roll out into the grass.
Oh. Okay,
it's supposed to look like Jurassic Park.
It's really cute.
It makes me so happy. Okay, number 3 is a nice light one to start with. This one's called The Little Things. I just want to know something little that makes you happy. Something somebody else out there might think is like seemingly silly, but to you it brightens your day.
Ooh. There's so many things. I feel like recently I've had to actively try to be happier. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to like really pay attention to the small things, because I find myself to be a bit of a pessimist. So I've been working on like the small things. I really appreciate this. I just got off a flight last night. I really appreciate plane etiquette. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I appreciate people who are kind on planes, because planes are already such a stressful situation. And not this flight, but the flight I had before this one was so great. Everyone was so kind, and I feel like that to me makes or breaks a flight, because you can feel the energy, you know what I mean? And everyone, last night was not a good flight. But
what did someone do? I must know.
I'm a nice person. And I got up. I already was nervous about getting up, because I had to talk to the guy in the aisle seat and be like, hey, can I get up and get something out of my suitcase? All I wanted was my hoodie. So I get up, but I started bringing a carry-on with wheels, and you know how annoying that is on a plane to like open up. So I go to get something out of my suitcase, and this other guy across the aisle is also getting something out of his. And I went to put the suitcase back in the bin. It was only our 2 bags. And there was plenty of room in the suitcase, or in the bin, and I put my suitcase back in. And he was like, no. You gotta move your stuff. My stuff's going there. And I was like, okay. Because in the moment, you're not really thinking. He's like going like this. And so I pushed my suitcase, and then he puts his stuff in. I'm like, that was so unnecessary. We both were fitting. And it was just a backpack and a fedora. Like, your backpack and fedora could literally go anywhere in the bin. And then I thought about it for the next like 3 hours, and I was really, really upset.
I would have done the same thing.
I bought Wi-Fi so I could text my parents and be like, was this really rude, or am I overreacting?
I don't even need something like that to happen. All I need is for me to be in the window seat and just have to ask someone to move when they don't want to.
And that's the thing, I was already vulnerable.
I will suffer.
I was already vulnerable.
I
literally I had to pee so bad on my last flight. And I held it for 4 hours because I refuse, like, I can't be like, excuse me. It's really, really nerve-wracking for me. But I've had a lot of plane experiences. I had someone spill an entire Diet Coke on like a white outfit of mine, and I was in it for 8 hours. Yeah, I ended up like switching. My boyfriend gave me his underwear to wear as shorts because I had no option. I've had a lot of plane experiences. So plane etiquette is important.
I respect this answer so much, especially as someone who's about to get on a bajillion cross-country flights.
There's your good days and your bad days,
yes.
But yeah.
Good vibes for the good days ahead,
I'm praying
please.
for you.
All right, you got your second roll on the tower now.
Okay.
All right, that's number 6. Number 6 is fun too. It's game show. If you could be on the game show of your choice, what would you pick, and could you actually win it?
Okay, I just started watching The Floor, and it's a game show where it's really hard to explain. There's like 81 squares, and each person stands on an individual square. There's 81 people, 81 squares, and you're basically trying to win territory. But you have your own category that you feel like you're a pro in. People challenge each other. So I feel like I could get far because I'm pretty good under pressure, and it's very fast paced. But I don't know if I have faith in myself to necessarily win. But I do think I was trying to like talk to my dad the other day about what my category would be, and I have no idea. Maybe like social media, something like chronically online.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look up this game. I can't believe I've never watched that.
People have the strangest categories too. It's like kitchenware or...
oh God, I'd fail miserably at that.
Oh, I know. It's like kitchenware or like sidekicks, like movie sidekicks, really like niche categories. It's really
if something is movies or TV, I could probably do pretty well on that one.
Yeah, my parents and I watched it in 2 nights because we were so invested. It was a good show.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up after. All right, third and final roll in the tower.
I love a game show.
So this is a meaty acting question. This is what I call favorite, least favorite. I want to know your single favorite part about being an actor. You know, rehearsing, stepping on set for the first time, something like that. But then also, not necessarily your least favorite, but a part of the process that you find challenging and see room to grow for yourself in.
Ooh, see, I think for me, the first day of stepping on set is the hardest. So I would say that's probably, I don't want to say my least favorite because it's exciting, but it's nerve-wracking. You know, you haven't, especially because this was my first like movie acting experience. I was so nervous. I didn't really know what I was doing fully. And I wanted to, you know, be impressive and do well. So in this particular experience, I would say also self-tapes. I know they're necessary, but I hate trying to find like a good wall in my house to film, or like I don't have a lot of like friends, so trying to find someone to film with, you know, those are always the hard parts. It's
also finding the right friend, because if you're reading with someone, that person can make or break what you're doing in the moment.
Right. So that's a big one. And I would say my favorite part, I have a lot of favorite parts. I love getting to meet new people, obviously, and work with other creative people. But I really love being able to sort of like loosen the reins and be a part of someone else's creative project, because so much of what I've done my whole career has been very much me-centric. So, and me coming up with ideas and me curating the content. So being a part of someone else's brain and someone else's project and getting to contribute to something as like a team is really exciting for me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for a new edition of Collider Ladies Night. I'm very excited to welcome Loren Gray to the show for Incoming. Congratulations on the movie.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to learn more about you. I feel like a lot of our viewers know when it comes to movies and television, like, that's my world. That's my life.
Oh, me
Social
too.
media and music, honestly, I have like a little work to do. So the fact that I get to learn about a new experience right now is making me very happy.
Oh, yeah, we can learn from each other.
I'm curious, what is the very first thing you remember dreaming of becoming when you grew up as a kid? Was it singing? Was it maybe acting or something else?
It was acting.
Ooh.
I used to like memorize, have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Oh, yes, I have.
I would memorize the introduction to that show and recite it for my parents, and then we would watch different movies, like The Sixth Sense was one, you know, I see dead people, and they would have me like act it out in the living room. But I always loved entertaining in any form. I loved singing. I had like my little karaoke machine, and I would have, you know, tickets that my parents would give me, and I would invite them into the dining room to watch me perform. Dancing, when I got a little older, I was a cheerleader and did a ton of sports. So really any form of like performance, but acting I think is the first thing. Yeah.
I love that. Now I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite movies now?
Oh my gosh, I'm a big psychological thriller person.
Okay.
So I love Seven. I love The Split, Unbreakable, Mr. Glass. I was actually just talking about this, but I also love like Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
Fight Club. Primal Fear is my favorite movie of all time.
Wow. I love how you know that.
Yes, I love like a 90s, early 2000s like psychological thriller.
You're speaking my language right now.
They're my favorite. I could go on and on and on.
I have a great recommendation that I'm able to say because it's a Netflix movie, and I caught it at Sundance this year, and it was my second favorite movie at Sundance, and it's one of the coolest horror movies, but it's like got psychological thriller vibe to it. It's called It's What's Inside.
Ooh, and I love a horror movie too. Okay,
great
this is
ensemble
really
piece. Do not miss that one.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to remind me of that before I leave.
Without a doubt, happily. All right, so I want to start with some questions about social media, and again, forgive me in advance because this is not my space. I might ask things that like sound kind of stupid, but I don't know. The first thing I was curious about is you started with Musical.ly, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember, I know this was a long time ago, but do you remember what it was about that platform that made you think to yourself, like, this is a good place for me to express myself creatively the way I want to?
I love that question. I think, initially I didn't fully understand musically when I started gaining traction. So I was sort of learning as I was growing an audience. Because I was uploading videos accidentally. I was trying to save them to my camera roll, and then they were, going viral. And that's sort of how I started learning about it. But the music is a huge part of my life, and Musical.ly, TikTok, they're very music-based platforms. And I mean, it's the same platform, but just a little different. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was very music-based, which made me feel really comfortable because I love music. And there was also the comedy aspect. And at that time, there was a lot less pressure. So I feel like there's a lot more pressure now. But at that time, I could be funny, and I like to post my gymnastics and my cheerleading and kind of a little bit of everything. And the whole platform felt very natural, very organic, and kind of aligned with everything that I loved. So, and the community was great too. Like the fans were really, still are really great. And that was sort of the beginning of everything. So yeah, I would say it was very positive for like a young Loren who was dealing with a lot, and I needed that outlet for sure.
Because you just brought up fans, I'll go there next. Do you remember the first time you had a fan encounter that I guess really validated your work, not necessarily to you, but in terms of the impact it was having on other people, like where you were becoming a very positive element of their day-to-day?
I have two stories. So the first time I was ever recognized publicly, I was riding my bike from my parents' house to, this is when I was like 13. I was riding my bike to CVS, and this little girl was outside. I don't know what she was doing. And she was outside, and she stopped me, and she was like, "Oh, I watch your videos." And she literally lived like in the neighborhood over. But I was like, oh, that's really cool. Someone recognized me from that and not from school or whatever. So that was the first, I guess, fan I ever took like a picture with or anything. And I was just riding my bike. And I guess the moment where I realized that I was having an impact, oh my gosh. I don't know if it's the first time, but I did a meet and greet. I didn't really realize the scale of what I had built. At that time, I hadn't really done a ton of meet and greets, and I was going to London, and I wanted to try and just see, if a few people would show up if I posted something. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Leicester Square, meet and greet. I showed up. Police were there. It ended up like shutting down Leicester Square. I got like shoved into a bar. My mom, like my coat got ripped out of my mom's hands, and it just like went through the crowd like and people were like hysterical, and I was 14 or 15 at this time. So I felt awful because I was like, had I known, I would have done this properly. But I was 15. I didn't understand the gravity of what was happening, and so many people saying so many nice things, and I feel like that was the moment where I realized how big it was, and just seeing people that like excited and hysterical was real, like an out-of-body experience, because I hadn't really had interactions to that magnitude with fans. So that was a really crazy moment. But I feel like I have encounters all the time where people say, really, really awesome things to me, and I've put myself out there a lot on social media when it comes to like my personal experiences and my life, and people have reacted and responded really positively to me in public, and I appreciate that because it makes it feel a little less scary.
I always do my homework for these, so I went online and I binged tons of videos, like tons of interviews you've done, and you're like so open and honest and raw in a way that I feel like if someone hears you talk about something that's troubling them, it could maybe help the person watching the video, and that's a really special impact to have on a lot of people.
Yeah, and even like I was like on a carpet for an award show, and these two girls were waiting in line, and they were like, "Oh, we saw X, Y, and Z video of you talking about this, and that was really helpful, and like we really appreciate it." And that's happened to me everywhere. It's happened to me at clubs. Girls coming up to me in clubs, and they're crying, and then I'm crying. Lots of experiences like that, but it definitely is why I started, this in the first place. So, yeah.
I love that. I love people in this business who make other people feel seen. We should all always do that for each other.
I agree.
So you build your social media brand, then you move to LA. I am curious, how did you determine when the right time to make the leap and go to LA?
There really wasn't a right time. I moved to LA when I think I just turned 15. I'm really bad at timelines, but you'll see it because I always say I think I was really bad. But I think I was around 15, and my mom and I were just out here visiting, and I had so much work. I was doing award shows, and everything was sort of happening really fast on like me sort of entering the entertainment industry space outside of just like my bubble of posting, and it was happening really fast, and there was a lot of invites and things, and I was trying to do online school, but they needed me like clocked in at certain hours, so my mom and I were trying to figure that out. And my mom and I are both very spontaneous. And she was like, I think you're going to need an apartment here. Like, this is, And there was a big conversation between my family because my parents both work full time. And that would have meant my dad staying home and my mom coming out to live with me. And they made that sacrifice for me, which I will never stop thanking them for, because I would not have made it this far had they not done that. So yeah, my mom came out with me, and we looked at the first apartment I got, and it was in Studio City. We were like a year lease, and I was like, okay, we're doing it. And I've been here ever since, so I guess it was the right move.
I love it. All right, so you come out here, big two-part question about getting your first taste of the entertainment industry in Hollywood.
Right.
First, what is something about the way the business worked that when you got here made you say to yourself, like, I'm in the right place, I should be here? But then also, can you tell me something about the business that came with a little bit of a learning curve?
Sure. Well, I met a lot of people. I met a lot of creative people, and I met a lot of really good people. And I say that meaning a lot of people with good intentions with their content and with being in the entertainment space. And it's tough because, I wasn't always surrounded by neither of my parents work in creative fields. My dad's a biologist, and my mom was working at a bank at the time. So I was like, they're both creative in their own respect, but I was pursuing it. So to be around other people like that and to make friends that were in the space and be able to grow within that was really, really exciting. The not so great part was I'd also grown up in a household where like anything was possible, right? And I sort of always had my parents' trust with taking lead over my own life. If I thought that something was, going to be best for me, then they would support that. And I also grew up in a house where like I felt really smart. I was nurtured in that way. And so when I came to LA and I was interacting with record labels and men, I realized how dumb everyone thought I was. And that was a really, really tough feeling because I knew that I felt like I had proved myself because I built this platform on my own, and I had, what I thought were pretty good marketing skills, and I just wasn't given any credit, and it was really frustrating. And so that was definitely a learning curve, was, you have to constantly prove yourself and constantly show up. And I have no problem doing that now, but I definitely got my feelings hurt quite a bit in the beginning because I knew what I was capable of, and I knew other people didn't necessarily always see that. So, yeah, I had to learn to trust my brain and just, really get in there and fight for what I wanted. And surround myself with people who were also willing to fight for me,
Oh, I'm going to come back to that. But your answer just now made me think of a question I do like to ask pretty often because I think it's important. Do you remember the first time in this business when you did feel the power of your own voice, where you spoke up, it was heard, and you realized you can keep doing that?
I feel like there's been little turning points constantly. I feel like I was constantly evolving, and you gotta know when to bite your tongue and when to stick up for yourself. And there was a lot of times where I felt like biting my tongue was actually the most powerful thing I could do in some moments, because there's a lot of times where I've been really, really frustrated and I've really, really wanted to act, out of line. But keeping it together and handling things in a professional way always worked out for me. So I think just being strategic and evolving with my career and sort of knowing when to make the right decisions. And my mom helped a lot with that. My mom was, she was never a stage mom, but she did keep an eye on everything and taught me, instead of just being like, I'm handling this, I'm your manager, She taught me so that now that I'm older, I can, I have the reins and I learned on my own as well. But I don't know. I think saying no gave me a lot of, or made me feel a lot of power, I guess. I was at a record label. I was signed to a record label, and they offered me a song about being bisexual. They obviously didn't listen to the lyrics. They were like, it's a hit, it's a hit, it's a hit. And I was like, I can't sing that. And that's where I put my foot down. And that was the right decision for me, because that would have never worked out. And I knew that. It was the same thing. My most streamed song is called Queen. And I fought so hard for that song. And they did not want to put it out. And they didn't want to put any budget behind it. My mom took the photo for the Spotify cover on her phone. And we made it happen. And then it ended up being, the most streamed song. So I think it was just a lot of knowing when to say no, knowing when to bite your tongue, and sort of making those strategic moves to not burn any bridges, but also move forward in the best way.
I like these mentalities. I'm becoming a bigger fan of yours, and also a really big fan of your mom right now.
Oh, she's great. She's
making me really happy.
She's like the fiercest person ever. But I will say the best thing my parents ever did for me was trust me. Always. And I've never not had that. And a lot of people don't have that. So I'm very, very lucky.
So true. So true. All right. So this you just touched on this maybe a little bit, but I was going to use this to kind of teeter into acting, because in film, it can be really scary to commit to making an independent film because it's more risky. You're putting in more of your own personal resources versus if you're in the studio machine and certain big things and tools are given. I was reading that in 2021, you opted to become an independent artist and make music on your own. So can you tell me a little bit about why producing music independently felt like it would serve your craft best?
I feel like this is sort of, and I'm sure it's the same for film, but you just have so much more control. When I first started making music, there were so many cooks in the kitchen, and everyone thought they knew what was best for me, and everyone thought they knew who I should be, and sort of negated everything that I'd built and everything that I already was. And it's, for me, always been about connecting those dots between everything that I'm doing, whether it be film or music, and doing things that people that are, people expect from me, or maybe don't always expect from me, but that feels natural to me. And there were a lot of things that were happening when I was a part of, the whole label situation that were not natural to me, that were not who I was. And that was something I really struggled with. So being independent, I also just love having control over my own creative projects. I love being able to freely say no and freely express myself, because that's the point, and that's what people connect to. So, yeah, I think it was kind of a no-brainer, and especially after my experience at the label, I was like, I don't want to do that for a while until my vision is solidified, people know who I am, and then you can bring people on board to facilitate that. But until then, until I have it figured out, until I'm done with the experimenting and whatever, maybe that never happens. Maybe I just want to be independent forever, but that's something that, my hands need to be on the wheel for.
Makes all the sense in the world. So in the music realm, you have representation, like people that are on your team. And the same thing is true in acting as well. So is there anything you learned from working with a label and having representation as a musician that impacted the team you built for yourself as an actor now?
Oh my gosh. Well, my team all the way around is pretty much all women. And I just find that I'm able to relate so much more. They're so much more sensitive to my my needs as an artist or as an actor. They understand me as a human outside of, who I am as an entity. And that's so important because these people are the closest people to you in most situations. So you have to be able to trust your team, and that's something that I'm very, very grateful for.
That's a perfect quality to have in a team around you in this business. So now getting into actually making the transition, I got a big two-part question about that. What is something about your success with social media and music that you think has served you well when you wanted to get your first acting roles? But then also, did you wind up in that situation where everyone's boxing you into what you already did and thinking that's all you can do and you can't act?
I mean, I think that's always going to be the situation. And it's the same thing in any medium that I explore, in any creative path that I pursue, I'm always going to have to prove myself, and I'm okay with that because I like raising the bar a little bit and being like, no, I can do this. So I don't mind. I used to really, really be bothered by being put in those boxes and be like, oh, you can't do me. But I'm older now and I have more faith in myself than I think I did as, a 16, 17, 18-year-old, and that only continues to grow. And I work really hard, and that's something I know for a fact. So I have no problem because I love breaking out of those boxes. And when it comes to social media, I'm very fortunate because I've had so much time on set and interacting with people out, obviously not as an actress, but I've been on a lot of sets. I've been a part of a lot of projects, and I know how to handle those situations. I'm also not afraid of embarrassing myself. My whole life is on the internet. There's nothing I have no shame anymore. So that was really helpful when we were shooting Incoming. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I take with me from my background, obviously, and that's a big one.
Yeah,
because that's what gets in a lot of people's way is, fear, and I still have a little bit of that, but a lot less than I used to.
The way I always justify fear in any line of work is that fear comes from a place of caring and wanting to do well.
Absolutely.
And if I ever lose that fear, it means I've lost that drive. And then, what am I doing here anymore?
Exactly. There's a healthy amount of fear to have because that's what pushes you.
Mm-hmm. So you had a sense of how a set works based on your past work. What about when it comes to acting techniques? I guess in particular, when you took the role in Incoming, was there any specific, technique or kind of prep work type of thing that someone recommended you try to get into the role?
There's a few things. So before I started social media, my mom would drive me up to New York every week to do acting classes because anything that I was interested in as a kid, my parents made it happen. And that's something that, again, I'll never take for granted. But I did acting classes in New York, and then once I started social media, I got away from it a little bit because then I was working on my voice and music lessons, and I didn't want to spread myself too thin. But once I started filming self-tapes and got the script for Incoming, I worked with a couple different acting coaches, and I kind of always have here and there throughout my career. But I locked in with this one specifically because I just loved the script so much, and I wanted it really, really bad. So, yeah, I mean, something that I learned that helps me, I like, this is going to sound a little conceited, but I'll explain it. I like watching myself when I'm just talking. So, watching a podcast of myself and seeing my mannerisms, because there's a lot of things you do and with your face and, the way that you express that you don't realize unless you watch yourself when you're not trying. Mm-hmm. And those are things I wanted to be aware of if I'm going to be in a movie. So I watched a lot of just myself. I shake my head a lot. That was something I had to break. My acting coach was like, can you stop moving your head? Because I talk a lot with my hands and my head. I'm from Philly, so I'm all over the place. So there was a lot of things I had to unlearn about my mannerisms to make it a little more digestible and less all over the place. But I learned a lot from working with coaches, and, it's a lot of don't do this. And yeah, I would say my biggest issue was all this and head shaking.
I still do that in this space. I'm like the queen of knocking the mic or something falling off my lap. I don't know. I love talking about acting coaches, and I feel like we don't highlight that nearly enough in this industry. You just mentioned that you've worked with a bunch of them. I am curious, is there any one in particular that you identified as like the perfect person in terms of the techniques that they were teaching, and maybe also how you like to receive notes?
I don't think I've necessarily found like the perfect fit for me yet. I think I've learned bits and pieces from different people. But obviously that's why I've had so many different people, because I've just been it's trial and error. It's like finding a therapist, or you know what I mean? You have to try different people, because just like music and everything I do on social media, acting is also a very vulnerable thing because you're tapping into real emotions. So that was something every person that I, am working with, I'm like trauma dumping to so that they can work with me. And I feel like I learned a lot about being open. I learned a lot about not being afraid to embarrass myself and going 100% all the way in. But yeah, I'm still looking for that person, and I think I just kind of learned bits and pieces from everyone.
It makes all the sense in the world. I think one of the absolute coolest things about acting is that there's endless approaches to doing it. Like everyone's got a different technique, a different way of learning, a different way of expressing themselves, and that's part of the reason why Ladies' Night would be a really boring show if everyone had the same experience.
Right, exactly.
Let's get into Incoming specifically now. First, I'm curious, how was the role initially pitched to you, and what was it about the role that made you think, like, this is a good way for me to kind of introduce myself to the world as an actor?
So I had done a lot of self-tape auditions here and there, but there was nothing really jumped out at me the way that Incoming did. I first of all, I love that it was a comedy, because I love a comedy and I think I can be funny. So that was something I really wanted to do. But the role was just so outlandish. There was 2 different roles that were on. That I had 2 different sides for 2 different roles. And I loved the role of Katrina because it was so me. It was so me. It aligned with who I am perfectly. And it's just so outlandish and out there. And I feel like it's what people would expect from me, but with a twist, which I was really, really stoked on. So I wanted it really bad. And she's funny and it's silly, and that was really great because I wanted a project that I felt like I could push myself on, and this was it was like the perfect combination because it was comedy, so it can be silly and it can be fun, and I don't have to take it too serious, but I also get to do these really crazy, outlandish things that people wouldn't necessarily expect me
I
to
will
do.
say, though, that twist, you stick the landing especially well. Like, you're having fun with the comedy. The fact that feels as grounded as it does after all of that, I'm very impressed by that. I mean it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious about finding the right tone comedy-wise now. What are some of the conversation you had with Dave and John in terms of figuring out how big to go and when going big was maybe too big and when to rein it in?
I mean, they double, triple, quadruple checked with me that I was comfortable with the role because it is very out there. So it was something that they checked with me over and over and over and over again. And I told them, I was like, I'm ready for anything. I'm going all the way in, and I'm really excited about this. So I feel like there was never really, everything's so exaggerated. So there's never really too big. And we collaborated in certain aspects of the script with, I was like, I don't know if she would say this, or I don't know if I would say this, or maybe let's say this instead. And they were very collaborative, which I was so grateful for. But yeah, it was so far out there that I don't know if there was ever a moment where they were like, can you reel it in? If anything, they were like, can you be more sloppy? And I feel like we went there.
It does feel like a role like this does not work unless you're fearless while playing it.
Yeah.
And you do. Like, you go there and you own every single ounce of it.
Yeah, and it's, it was slightly embarrassing, but when everyone's laughing with you, it makes the experience that much better. So I I had a really good time.
How about working with Raphael and Ramon on some of those scenes? Because, it's important to have leaders that make sure you're comfortable on set, but it also is very important that your scene partners are making you feel that way too. So what was the collaboration like with them?
They're very cute. They're just like good kids, and they're so funny. There was so many times where I'm just sitting, like passed out, and I had to not laugh while they're interacting. And they're so talented. There's so much talent in their little bodies. And I was so grateful to be around them. They were so sweet all the way through, so hilarious. They had to carry me a lot, and I know that was not an easy thing. I'm 5'9". I'm a large girl, so I appreciate them handling that situation with grace. And they were just they're really cool, really cute, really personable kids, and I'm glad I got to, be around them.
Seems like a good group across the board.
It really was. Everyone's so nice, and I was like, I'm so spoiled, and everyone's like, this is not everyone's experience, so don't take it for granted, but yeah, I'm very lucky.
I feel like we need to appreciate the gem ensembles when they happen, but also there's many, many more out there, and I'm sure you're going to be part of many, many of them.
Yes, I hope so.
So I have a lot of faith. I did want to talk a little bit, without spoiling anything, about where your character lands, because again, there's like a little bit of a twist there, and it feels like that last bit is incredibly hard to justify unless you plant the seeds early on. So did you do any kind of character backstory work, something that would justify what she's like at the beginning of the film, but also what we see of her at the end?
Well, there's a few different approaches, because one of them is sort of, I feel like, especially like you're saying at the end, very much so who I wish I could have been had I been in high school. So tapping into that sort of, I graduated high school, but I was homeschooled. Let me clarify. But had I been in physical school, that's who I would have wanted to be, which doesn't really make sense throughout the middle of the film, but at the end, it sort of, it ties the knot and in a little bow. So I really, really love who Katrina is, and she's also based on some real people that, John and Dave are a real person that John and Dave knew. So talk to them about that. So there's different things I could pull from, but I felt like I had a pretty good grasp just from being able to relate to the character.
Is there any particular new tool in your acting toolkit that you gained from making this film that you're most excited to put to use on your next film?
Oh my gosh. I think just this movie particularly, I'm glad I got to do as my first experience, because it's so far out there that I feel like anything I do now, it can't be as embarrassing. Maybe it could, but I feel like I've embarrassed myself to the highest degree. I've put myself out there to the highest degree, and I know I can do it now. And that's something, I've watched the movie. I didn't cringe at myself, which I was really expecting to do. I did, but not because of the acting. So I know I can do it now. And that, I think, was the biggest hurdle for me, because I have to sort of prove it to myself the same way I'm proving it to everyone else, because I don't really even know what I'm capable of until I get up there and do it. So I think for me, it's just the confidence that came along with it.
So safe to assume the acting bug in Hollywood has bitten you. You have the itch to do more.
Yes.
Okay. I like that. I'll ask you one more question about that. Can you give me something on your acting bucket list? A person you want to work with, a genre you want to work in, anything at all?
I have a long list of favorite actors and actresses. I love Rachel McAdams. She's my favorite actress of all time ever. I also love James McAvoy, Anthony Hopkins, Ed Norton. I have so many favorite actors that I would just, even to be in the same room with, I would probably just fall over. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that I would even just want to be around in any capacity. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like to take things as they come, and when I'm excited about something, I want to put my best foot forward and throw myself at it and try 100%.
I love it. Just because you brought up McAvoy, I'll say go see Speak No Evil in September.
Ooh, I have not seen. I need to watch a trailer.
It's like a little bit of a psychological thriller horror movie, and it's also just an epic four-hander between four actors who are just absolute perfection. It's basically just watching them like verbally spar, for the most part at least. Obviously things get crazy
exciting.
eventually, but they're really good together. It's almost like watching a play.
That's very exciting. I need to tap into that.
Big recommend right there. All right, we've hit our final ladies' night question. This is the question that the show always ends on.
Okay.
I feel like what you just answered actually could have been a good answer to this, but I'll take even more.
Okay.
In this industry, people give each other awards. I think that's super cool. We should keep doing that. I find that nobody tells themselves good job nearly enough, though. I want to know something you accomplished making Incoming that you know you'll be able to look back on and say, I am so proud of what I did there.
I think you're right. Sort of what I said about just putting myself out there to the highest degree was like, that was something I'm really proud of. But I'm also proud that I gave myself the chance to do it. I feel like there's a lot of times where I've been scared to put myself out there, or scared to be told no, or scared to be criticized. But I feel like this whole project made me believe in myself a lot more, because this is something that I never thought I'd be doing. I never thought I'd be working with Netflix, like on a movie that I'm proud of, and like there's so many things around it that I'm very glad that I gave myself the chance to do, even if I didn't fully know what I was getting into. I was very pleasantly surprised with myself. So. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You should be proud.
Thanks.
I'm so excited that we're covering your first big movie on today's Ladies' Night, because I know you're going to be back with more movies soon, and I can't wait to cover the journey from this to that. So congratulations on Incoming, and I can't wait to hear about everything else coming your way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.